number one is going to be Black Widow. Black Widow, baby.
Black Widow. So Black Widow fills in the gap of what Natasha was doing between Captain America: Civil War and Infinity War, namely taking down the Red Room, the organization that kidnaps young girls and trains them to be world-class assassins. Reunited with her faux family, comprising of Sister Yelena, Florence Pugh, yes, Alexei, the Red Guardian, David Harbour, and Melania, Rachel Weisz. They aim to take down the corrupt organization run by Dreykov, Ray Winston, his army of widows, and the vicious Taskmaster, who has the ability to learn and copy the fighting style of anyone the Taskmaster studies.
So before we get into like the meat and potatoes, just in general with no spoilers, that was the summary didn't really spoil anything. That was everything that was pretty much seen from the trailers. What was your just general feelings on the movie? Spoiler free.
First off, it was the second movie we saw in the theater since everything.
Yeah.
So to have Steve Rogers throw the shield at the beginning in a theater, goosebumps. Literally just like I'm seeing a Marvel movie in the theaters. I was so pumped. I really, really enjoyed it. Because it took like a lot of things that I really enjoy, which are, spy thrillers, so James Bond, Mission Impossible kind of stuff, mixed it in with Marvel. And then I also got Florence Pugh and Scarlett Johansson. The other actors are also very good. But I just, if you follow me on the Instagram, that has been a Florence Pugh stan account for since Little Women came out. So I thought like it was really good action, a good enough plot to kind of keep things, moving. Not, it didn't have to be the best, it wasn't like the craziest plot in the world, but it gave you enough to keep things rolling along. It was 2 hours and 15 minutes. And for me, I thought it kind of just flew by. I had no issue with it. I thought it was a good bridging of the gap between a good storyline that I think Scarlett Johansson deserved, because she is one of the more important characters, in the early parts of this Avengers, saga, and we get a full thing from her. And this is the funny thing I'll say about this too, is making it seemed like it was a lot of fun. And it seemed like she was having a really good time, knowing this would be her last movie, presumably. I know things are happening with the Marvel universe that could change that, but this was to me a fun movie. It was a nice way to get back into Marvel. I'd hate to come into Marvel after not seeing something in the theaters for so long and to be really heavy, because that would have been a weird way. So for me, I really enjoyed it. Maybe it was just I don't think there was anything that I would take away. I just thought it was a really well done, this kind of movie. This isn't Infinity War. This isn't Endgame. This isn't, it's more reminiscent of the Winter Soldier, not as deep as the Winter Soldier, but it was good it was great to me actually for what it was. What did you think?
This movie should have happened 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree.
Like it should have, like that's where this movie misses, and it's very unfortunate that they felt the need to fill in the gap after she dies in Endgame. Spoilers for Endgame if you're one of the people that lives under an actual continent. This movie should have happened 5 years ago, and I think it would have been a much bigger deal. I think this was almost like we have to give her something. We'll just give it to her now. But it should have been in the moment. With that being said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought that this was one of the better solo movies, not any kind of team up. Not like the Avengers, obviously, but not even, Civil War's Avengers Light. We've said that many times. Guardians has a boatload of characters, that sort of thing. But I think that this movie was certainly on par with like any of the Iron Man movies. Yeah, I would better than 2 out of 3 Thor movies.
Yep.
Probably stands. The difficulty with saying that it stands with like Spider-Man is that Spider-Man is such a beloved character, like bigger than all of this. You know what I mean? Realistically, he's the main guy for most people. But yes. I felt like this was every bit as good as Far From Home. maybe not as good as
Oh, yeah.
Homecoming. I favor Homecoming over Far From Home,
I do too.
but I really enjoyed it. The characters, Yelena, obviously, as we, we'll get into the spoilers in a second. She's an interesting character. The Red Guardian, Alexei, David Harbour's character, not at all what I was expecting.
Right.
The villain was a little weak. The villains were weak. I will say that that's where this
particularly,
well, this had potential though, and I'll get to that when we get into the, let's just do it. Okay. Spoilers.
Yeah, let's do it now. Spoilers now. Get ready.
Spoilers for Black Widow. Skip if you're listening, check the timestamp, skip to the next section, which will be Loki. The Taskmaster, they said one of the lines was he studied all your friends. So he can fight, and they kind of showed that off. He has the shield, he's flinging it around like Captain America. He has the claws like T'Challa. He does the dagger drop thing like Bucky. I feel like they could have played with that more, and I think that would have made that a more interesting character. The villain was like, this is probably between him the Taskmaster is actually the daughter of Dreykov.
Right.
So that was a change from the comics because in the comics, the Taskmaster is male. Between the Taskmaster and Dreykov in general, the villains in this movie were maybe the worst. Dark Elves, probably at the bottom of that list. This was almost like a very generic version of Sam Rockwell and Mickey Rourke, Iron Man 2. Really not great bad guys. But the unfortunate part was, whereas in many cases, the hero is fighting an evil version of themselves. We've covered that at length. This was her fighting an evil version of literally all of the Avengers at that point. Like, they could have done so much with that, and they just kind of didn't. So that was kind of disappointing. Because they build it up, especially in the trailers. They really built that character up as being like the ultimate badass, and then it just kind of wasn't. David Harbour's character was hilarious.
Yes.
I was expecting a little bit of that. They kind of played it with it in the trailers a little bit to show you some of the stuff, but like this whole thing, like he was like a contemporary of Captain America, which is obviously bullshit because Cap was on ice. And just like how much of an actual kind of piece of shit he was. Like, I wasn't necessarily expecting that. They led you to believe in the trailer that they were an actual family. And then you find out that it was all like a front from the jump. They're living in Ohio. They shot all of their holiday pictures in one day together and everything to make a bullshit family photo album. Like, that's pretty crazy. And that's where, like, as I'm watching it, I'm thinking to myself, I know Greg's going to love this because of the spy type aspects of it.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing about this movie that I appreciated was like that whole storyline where they were taken away as young girls and put into this life was incredibly sad. I thought that this was one of the most emotional movies in the MCU from that standpoint, because that's a really heavy topic. I know sex trafficking and human trafficking is a very, very big topic in the world right now. So for them to sort of take that on in a way that, gives empathy to those victims, and at the same time being able to seamlessly kind of fold that into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I thought they did a really good and tasteful job with that. How they say like a lot of them don't survive, 1 in 5 survive, something like that. And it is a very like messed up thing that happens in the world, and I thought that they handled it with care. They didn't make light of it.
Yeah.
But it was, especially with the relationship between Natasha and Yelena, incredibly sad. And I thought that was the part of the movie that I felt was the most moving, were those sections where they were kind of talking about that, whereas the action was kind of by the numbers and the villain kind of sucked. So that's my sort of spoiler review of the movie. Overall, I liked it. It's just that there was maybe a little bit more potential. And like I said, this definitely should have happened 5 years ago.
And on that end of like, it should have happened 5 years ago. And maybe where I'll I don't disagree on that end because yes, Scarlett Johansson deserved this movie, but let's say it does kind of happen in that, and we're in between movies and it, of course it's going to make, a gazillion dollars. It's a Marvel movie, but I think it just kind of gets forgotten at that time because there'll be all the big movies around it and it'll happen. It'll make a lot of money because, Marvel movies are, they just make money. It doesn't really matter. So it's like for the fact that this was the first one to come out in theaters during this time is like maybe gave it a little bit of thing because now it's like, it's everywhere. Like all the sites that I read about stuff like this, it's the first topic, the day it comes out. And, is it the first topic? Probably the first topic, 5 years ago. But then the thing will always be like, well, we're married to the very last movie just came out 2 months ago and things like this. So I agree with you in the actual theory is yes, it should have came out 5 years ago, but maybe because it didn't, and it would have come out, last May if things didn't hit the fan.
Right.
It was almost like perfect timing in a way, in the way that it was just like, oh, so now like Scarlett Johansson gets her full due of this. And it's not just, we're not waiting for the next Avengers or anything like that. We're getting here is we're getting Natasha, we're getting your storyline. She dies. And then we get Florence Pugh Yelena kind of avenging her death. That's what we find out. And it happens to be Bucky that Hawkeye. She's going to go after. Or I'm sorry, but Hawkeye. That was some slip of the tongue. Yeah.
And
Hawkeye.
This was supposed to be in the end credits. We see her visiting the grave of Natasha, and she's approached by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who made her debut, who should have made her debut in this, but actually made her debut in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Approaches her, and it seems like that she's now sort of assembling this sort of like offshoot generic Avengers, where now she's pulling in like, Black Widow too. Because here's the thing in the comics, when you have multiple versions of a hero taking up the different mantles, they'll literally call them like Black Widow 2, Falcon 3, whatever, like it's a movie or such. But she's bringing in US Agent, who's just a generic Captain America. She's bringing in Black Widow too. She's probably going to be recruiting some other folks along that lines, and we may see some sort of, because that's a team in the comics. I'm not sure off the grip. I know I looked at it at one point and I just failed to write it down.
Is it I know she came. I'm looking this up just to clarify. So she was in Inhumans 1999. That's when Yelena makes her first appearance. Yeah. Trying to find the actual.
It's not. The team's not Inhuman. It's not Inhuman.
No. That's just when she made her.
It might be Young Avengers. That actually plays into something in the next topic.
AIM, Russian Federation, Shield, Vanguard. Vanguard is the one, I think. Yeah, that team.
Right, but that's the thing is the other aspect of that is we're getting Kate Bishop confirmed, Haley Steinfeld in the Hawkeye series, which is another one of those Young Avenger team members and such. So they could be beginning to form that. There's certainly going to be another team movie. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be another team up. So it's not. But yeah, I mean that's kind of where I lay with everything with Black Widow. I just wish it would have fallen in the correct place in the timeline. I get what you're saying that it probably helped it to be, as everything shook out, it probably helped it a little bit. But at this point, I really feel like after Civil War, everybody hangs on everything Marvel does, and we're going to talk about that in the next topic. That I don't think it would have necessarily mattered if they just.
I don't necessarily. I don't. It's one of those things where I don't think it hurt it as much as like a lot of other things can hurt things. We still get what I think what everybody kind of deserved in the end is Scarlett gets her own movie.
Yeah. I mean, it probably would have, if they would have done it like at the correct timeline, it would have preceded Doctor Strange. Or somewhere in there. It would have been fine. It would have been fine.